Let's get this going. All right. Let's send it on YouTube. All right. Okay, let's see if it all comes in right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. We just had to keep everybody in suspense because it's the new year, everything, not everything can just go smooth here, but we got to figure it out. So what is up, Joe? We're going to talk today about, is WordPress scared of Webflow? But we're also going to go over some Webflow resolutions. You made a tweet the other day and asked people to share their resolutions with you. So
Yes.
What prompted that? Let's go ahead and say hi to the crew, and then we'll go I'll do a little run through of who's in the crowd here.
Well, I saw a lot of people sharing what they wanted to accomplish for the new year. Some of it was Webflow related, some of it was not Webflow related, and I wanted a nice list of what everybody's looking to do in Webflow in 2022. So that's what prompted it. I want to see what everybody's looking to do, what everybody's up to. And I will give a quick disclaimer on that before we get started. There were a number of people that reached out to me privately. Some people don't want to share their goals publicly. That's okay. So we're going to talk about these public tweets, but if you have goals, you are totally okay to keep them private. You can also message me privately. I'm totally okay with that as well. So let's get into it. Let's see who's in the crowd here.
Yeah, hang on real quick. Before we get too far to this thing, let's effing grow. Okay. Now we can go. All right, let's see who's in the crowd here. We got Magdalena in the house. What's up, Magdalena? Slawek is here. Jose Arce, Happy New Year. Indeed, Happy New Year to everyone in the audience with us. Grace Walker, what's up? Aditya in the house. Giuseppe is here. Penny, what is up? Maria, Rock and Roll CEO. Mustafa, what's up? Pierre is here. Babis, Ben, Teresa. Ooh, child, y'all got a squad out here. Mark is here. Ezekiel. What's up, Ezekiel? I saw you posted a new little profile picture looking fresh in the new year. Everybody out here getting their little, you got to get your little face on for your fresh profile pic. Jeffrey's in the house. Nick Jones, Tim, what's up? Caleb, Richard, Melissa Chan, Jay Poucher. What's up, Jay Poucher? Aditya, another Aditya. We got a couple of Adityas in the audience today. WKD, Richard Reynolds, Ben Ruckert, Luke, Gabriel, picks nice. Justin, everybody's here. Okay, how many people we got in here? Daggone. It says 48. Okay, kicking off the new year right. What is up, Joe? So, okay, so Webflow resolutions.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to start. We're going to run through a bunch of resolutions here. If we don't cover yours, we're sorry. We just got them queued up here with whatever Twitter says in this little row here. So we'll start with Eric. Joe, can you see the screen here very well?
I can.
Okay,
I
great.
can.
Yeah. And so what's the gist here, Joe? It's just like everybody's kind of setting New Year's resolutions, things like that. So this is Webflow specific. What prompted this?
Well, we're seeing a lot coming in of all different types of resolutions. We're seeing small little resolutions. We're seeing big grand goals. And we're seeing a mix of them. That's really cool to see. I know that when I was making my resolution, when I started this hashtag, I started to make a list of all the things I wanted to accomplish, and it just got too long. And that's how I generalized it to this 2X. We want to do 2X 2021. So when we read through these, it's going to be really interesting how different people see this next year and how they see their goals, big, small, in between. I'm excited to read through this. I gave a quick, brief run through, but I really wanted to save my enthusiasm for the show here.
Nice. Okay. Okay. So let's start right at the top here. Eric, who's on the Finsweet team, actually, is saying he wants to help at least 10 companies with high technical requirements embrace their Webflow platform, not just for landing pages, but for full-blown web apps. So that's pretty strong. What say you there?
Yeah, Eric is our newly appointed head of client technical work. So when we have a technical web application or something that requires a bit more than front end scripts, Eric is going to be the one to now start managing this process. So this is Eric's goal. I am going to work really hard to help him get this one.
Nice. Nice. Okay. Stosselson. My Webflow resolution is to even more push the Webflow adoption in our agency, starting by setting new
Nice.
standards for client projects. Second of all, by making coworkers understand and use it as well. I'm the only Webflow expert, so we can't use it for every client. So, yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, you know, it's a tough thing to do, convincing a whole company to make a big change like this. But if you really stick to this and you really show them the power of Webflow, I think you being the champion in bringing this product to them is going to be a game changer for the agency. So I love seeing this. Work hard on this. I want to see that happen.
yeah. Want to take this one?
Sure. My Webflow resolution is to finally finish my website that I've been tooling with for more than a year and launch the dang thing. I'm like that super fan who knows all of the stats and players and communities of a team, but is terrified of actually playing. Dan, love this tweet right here. Very honest. Good for you. This is a tough thing to do. It was tough for me multiple times on the first few launches of Finsweet sites. So just push through it. Once you do that, you're going to look back and say, "Why did I wait so long? I could have just done this and finished it." So this is your extra push to go do that. Congratulations.
Yeah, and plan. This is the one. I'm going to find my first effing client. So good luck
Nice.
to you on that. Let us know how we can help. Tune into the Grow Shows on Tuesday. We'll be talking a lot about that stuff throughout the year. So, Vamsi, go for it.
My Webflow resolution is to teach what I've learned in Webflow to 1,000 people this year and help them ship beautiful websites. Vamsi, this is a great one. This is saying, hey, I'm going to be an educator in this space. 1,000 people is a lot and very achievable.
Yeah.
So I love this one. Best of success to you.
Yeah, and I would encourage people on resolutions like this to maybe get a little more specific. Is this going to mean you're going to start a YouTube channel? Are you going to start doing classes in person? Are you going to start a meetup? So how are you going to get to that 1,000? So Vamsi, think about that as you go. Akshay is saying my Webflow resolution is to leverage the full potential of it, and I imagine that's Webflow, to create uncommon websites in the Wonder Junkyard. That looks like a link to the thing there. And if you look, we're just at Webflow resolution. We're looking at the top tweets here, so we're just running through all of these. Cigar, go ahead, Joe.
Sagar, my Webflow resolution is to learn Webflow and build a personal site. Great. So this sounds like your transition into the industry. Maybe you're doing this on the side or you want to start doing it. Sagar, go for it. This is one that you're really going to appreciate once it's done.
Yeah. Matt Hurry. My Webflow resolution is to run a Webflow studio this year and teach assist 200 people. So lots of people
Nice.
are looking to teach and expand the Webflow knowledge there. Let's see. There's a thread here, it looks like. Oh, I think I'll keep my 2022 goals pretty simple. Finish my first full year of web time freelancing, still in
Nice.
business, and become a Webflow expert. So Felix, nice. Those are great achievable goals there, I believe. Corey Moon, this one was got some traction here. Jay, you want to read this one?
My Webflow resolution is to help driven individuals learn to build efficient, scalable, and accessible sites in Webflow to empower their career or brand. And I would also love to keep diving deeper into the world of JavaScript. Great. So, Corey is here. Great. Corey is an all star working at Webflow. He is behind a lot of the great designs, a lot of the great websites that Webflow goes and releases. And there's reviews on those websites. Those websites are available for our inspiration. So, Corey is on this path. Great,
Nice.
great, great part of the community.
Yeah, and cool to see. Gray says, "What's up?" to Corey. So, yeah, if you're in the crowd, leave your comments as we go. We'll try to bring them up in real time here. Okay, so Joe, that was his tweet saying the last day to make the resolutions. Ananai is saying Webflow resolution launching Web Dreaming HQ and becoming a Webflow partner after meeting the
Nice.
criteria. So yeah, that's a great goal. Launching Web Dreaming HQ, which is a Webflow exclusive agency crafting meaningful digital experiences. There you go. 7 followers 6 followers and following 7 people. So that's a good start. This is like a true kicking off something new right here. So good luck with all of that.
Awesome.
Martina, what you got to say?
My Webflow resolution is to finish our website and launch it. It's looking so great. I'm happy and proud. Martina, awesome. Yeah, go for that.
Nice.
We're seeing a lot of these, right? There's
Yeah.
a bit of a trend. People want to finish this website that they've been working on. So, yeah, it's great to see that.
Forge is saying my 2022 resolution is to help Webflow designers and agency deliver SEO optimized sites for their clients from technical setup to optimize on-page SEO. How?
Nice.
And then he's got a link to the Flow SEO. So looks like Forge here is focused on SEO stuff in Webflow. So that's cool to see.
Cool.
If you're out there watching, there's an SEO group on Facebook. Search on Facebook for Webflow SEO. There's a specific group just for that. So Aditya, Joe, take this one.
Aditya, he is a Webflow developer at Finsweet. And my Webflow resolution is to work on large projects and push Webflow's limits to their farthest extent. Bring it on. Awesome. Aditya has grown significantly since he came to the Finsweet team. He started on tiny projects. He's now working with enterprise clients, and he is now going to be growing with us as we get bigger and bigger clients. I know this one's going to be hit.
For sure. I wanted to bring this up on the screen real quick. Tahir Hossein Javed is saying, just starting to learn Webflow. Can I survive only with Webflow freelancing? Absolutely. That's what people are saying here. Tons of us are, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a totally feasible resolution to set and goal for the year. Tim in the comments saying, I want to finish my website, but I got an issue with indexing that I can't seem to resolve, and the forum's not helping at the moment. There's lots of places to go for support. So maybe a resolution somebody has in the community is to help Tim. So maybe somebody in the comments can help Tim figure that out. But what's Alex Pearl saying here, Joe?
Alex Pearl, my Webflow resolution is to dive into the Finsweet attribute system and learn all about fluid responsiveness. Awesome. Love seeing that, Alex. Once you start using attributes, your possibilities just expand. So, come back. Tell us how that goes. I want to hear what you think about the system, what you think about our fluid responsiveness. We have a lot of docs coming out on that very soon.
Yeah. And Colleen's got a little reminder for us here. If you need an extra push to finish a project, we're doing monthly show and tell events. So come show what you built. We're doing one Monday the 10th. That's going to be in our Gather space. Super cool. Come share what you've been building, share your coolest project from last year, show something you're excited about working on this year, whatever it is. Come, we give everyone 5 minutes, and then we have a little bit of time for you to be able to like get feedback or some insights from whoever's there. But it's a great place to come and share some of those things and get some accountability. So good thought, Colleen. Corey is saying, my Webflow resolution is to move to working full-time using Webflow. Whether it's freelancing, agency, or both, go for it, Corey. Excited to see how that goes. Would love to support that effort in any way we can. So keep us posted on that progress, Corey. That was great. Tito, Joe, you want to read that one?
Tito Solano, my Webflow resolution is to expand my frontiers as a designer and Webflow developer and share more of what I have learned to empower more people. Awesome, Tito. So just improving the skills and then sharing those skills and sharing that knowledge. Love it.
Yeah, and I got to say, Tito, I owe you a message. I know I see it in Slack. I was unplugged for a while there, so I just kind of like disconnected. I haven't forgot about you. Much love. Tito's the Clone Comp champ. Yeah, so anyway, just wanted to say that while we're on air here. And if you're in the comments and you didn't get a tweet in about your resolution, go ahead and leave it in the comments. We'll pull a few of these up after we get done with the tweets here. So Kuda saying 2022 is to master the platform and the tools Finsweet is building for it, and to use that knowledge to build a practice that contributes significantly to its adoption in my country and the African continent at large. This is a huge goal. Like, I want to give big props to anybody who's doing this in a different language other than English. There's lots of people that are teaching Webflow in English. There's lots of people who are doing English-speaking meetups. That's prolific. But anybody who's doing this in other languages, who's opening this up to people who may not have access to this because the documentation is not native to their tongue, or because it's hard to learn because there's not courses or instructional material, this is a huge effort. So Kuda, whatever we can do to support that, we'd love to hear from you. And this goes to anybody else out in the audience. A lot of our team is distributed across the world, and so we have lots of incentive to help other folks figure out this tool and become proficient in that. Joe, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, love seeing this. I second it, what Reimar says. Please share your progress with us. We want to help. As part of 2022, one of the things we're going to do is shine light on people that are doing great work and shine light on the community as a whole. So if you're doing something great, we want to find a way to put you in our docs or put you in our marketing page or put you on our main website, however we can help. So great job, Kuda. Love seeing this.
Nice. Mirela, hello. Our Webflow resolution is for 2022 to get more involved with the Webflow community and help others build mega sites. You do a ton for the
Nice.
community already, so we appreciate everything you do, and I'd love to see what that means getting more involved. We had a planning committee yesterday. We're already talking about March doing our big global open house event. So if you're part of the Webflow community, keep an eye on that. I think we're looking at like March 24th for that event. But yeah, that was a blowout last year. Hundreds of people came, and we're going to do that again this year. And Mirela will be a part of that. So we're excited to work with her on our committee. So Anto, Arianto, that's such a cool name. Every time I say that, I'm like, yeah, Mr. Roboto. I don't know. Okay. In less than 40 minutes, going to have the first 2022 virtual water cooler chat with Aviv Tech on Twitter Spaces. Hope to see you there, raising hands. So that's their Webflow resolution, and they're doing another one coming up. And this is on a different time zone, sir. So if you're in the far west, I think Arianto is like in Singapore and Aviv is in Israel. And so they're doing stuff in different time zones, again, as part of this whole network. So if you're looking to join that, that's a great place to do that. Joe, you want to read Chris Loggins here?
Sure, Chris Loggins. My 2022 Webflow resolution is to speed up my Webflow build times and put out useful content for the Webflow and Bubble communities. Awesome, Chris. Love to hear that. And if you're in the crowd right now, I'd love to hear how you plan on doing that. Is this something like adopting client first to help you formalize your naming? Is this just practicing? How do you plan to accomplish this? I love it.
Yeah, nice. And Chris, I saw another tweet from him too about how he just kind of got started and how finding his way into this community was big for him because like not a lot of communities online are as inviting as this no code community. And so Chris, keep pushing, keep building those connections. Everybody here, like just keep being awesome because I think the welcoming nature and the sharing nature of this entire community is really something to be proud of. And I think we should all, give ourselves a little pat on the back for that sentiment. So Vency is saying 2022 is to learn Webflow and launch my first site. I've never used it before, but determined to learn it in 2022. This is great. This is the exciting ones where, new people are coming into the space. So, Joe, you want to take pennies there?
Penny, my Webflow resolution is to kick my marketing into higher gear this year using Webflow, and that's Finsweet's client first system. Let's do this. Awesome, Penny. Great to hear that. I've seen Penny recently do some video things, some education in groups, in meetups. So great, Penny. That's already a good start. I started seeing that late last year. Good for you.
Yeah.
Best of success with that.
Yeah, and Penny is a kick-ass moderator. She helped us in a no-code networking kind of thing, and it was great. So again, she's part of our committee here, getting involved in the community. You don't have to be a Webflow pro to get super involved in this community. That's a great way to learn, to get connected with other folks, and to also join in some of this camaraderie and find a niche that maybe is outside of the like being the Joseph Berries of the world, right? And finding other ways to provide value, to earn a business, to build something cool for yourself. So, yeah, shout out to everyone who's kind of just really pushing themselves to get better with the tool and to grow inside of the platform. I wanted to go real quick to one of the Twitter comments here. Ezekiel is completely implement the Finsweet client first system across our studio. So that's a Webflow resolution for Ezekiel. And
Nice.
then there was one other that I wanted to show here. Ben Ruckert saying is his Webflow resolution is to get as many Webflow projects done and learn as much as possible. Also want to get more into this Webflow amazing community for sure. So another great one there. Um,
Awesome.
you want to take these next couple ones from John and Peter here?
Sure. Peter, my Webflow resolution is to launch my design studio to fight the ordinary. Great. Peter has some very unique, custom feeling work. Go check it out. So I can totally see you, Peter, fighting that ordinary. Good for you.
That was me fighting the ordinary. If anybody's watching, you can take John's
Nice
there too.
moves. Nice.
Yeah.
We have from John, my Webflow resolution is to release more free clonables built with client first system and therefore increasing my build speed and improving on the quality of my Webflow projects. And he has a link to his clonables.
Nice.
John, that's great to hear. We just recently built a submission section and a showcase section of the client first docs. So as you start making more and more of these, you will start adding to this showcase. Then we're going to launch profiles and follows and all that type of stuff. And you can, really be a leader if you're focusing on this. If you're focusing on client first stuff, you can be a leader in that space. This is like a new little mini opportunity. So,
Yeah.
John, great to see that.
And John's been killing it on Twitter recently, posting all sorts of different projects and things. So go
Yes.
give John a little follow there. And then let's see, Joe's Webflow resolution 2022 year in review is 2x the size of 2021. I think that's what's up. We're gonna double down on everything we did here. So let's see, we got let's go a couple more minutes here on these resolutions, and then we'll jump into the topic of the day. So Pete, you want to take this one, Joe?
My Webflow resolution is to develop my SOP workflows for building in Webflow with Client First, build at least one new thing every week with Webflow, build and launch at least 6 new client projects all in Webflow, and build and share a useful clonable using Client First. Awesome.
Nice.
This is a really nice list, Pete. I think
Yeah.
if you go and hit all of these, that's going to be a rock star year for you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yar, let's see. My Webflow resolution is to improve my building skills and to be more involved in the Webflow community. I'm also working extra hard to become a Webflow expert within the first quarter of this year. Love to see that. Yeah, good luck with both of those. Getting involved with the community is super easy. Just find a place and start showing up. And don't always think you gotta like start the next group, right? Find somebody in your area that's got a group and show up and help them build their group, right? Like we talk about this in our event meetup episode we did a while back, that you don't always have to be the person that starts the biggest group. You can just show up to a group. And actually, I inherited my WordPress group like that. I showed up to an existing group, and eventually, I got to take over that group because the person was moving on. And so there's other ways to add value in that community space. So just look for things that are already happening. If there's not something happening around you, or if you see something that's not missing, that's when you should start something on your own. Otherwise, let's start working together on some of these bigger stuff. One of the goals for our event committee is to really get collaborative this year, and so I'd encourage everyone to do some of that too. So Joe, you want to take Alex?
Sure. We have Alex Iglesias, CTO of Finsweet. My Webflow resolution is to inspire more JavaScript developers to join Webflow and push the boundaries of the platform together. No code and yes code. It's a perfect match where wonderful things can be born.
Bang.
And this was the most liked, most interacted with tweet of the entire series of Webflow resolution.
Yeah.
So Alex, great. We can all see he's doing very, very great work. And we are absolutely looking to bring more technical developers into the space.
Yeah.
I think very important.
Okay, for the sake of time, I think let's do one more from the audience here, and then let's get into the subject matter, or otherwise we won't get to talk about any of that. It seems like we probably could have done a whole episode on Webflow resolutions, but what we might do instead is, what do you think about switching the topic? I know we talked about Thursday being like the fluid responsive stuff, Joe. Do we want to do the fluid responsive Thursday and then maybe have a goal setting session after that? Do we get interactive? Do we set a separate gather section? Let us know in the comments what you'd like to
Let's
see. Maybe
let's
we'll
open
just,
a poll.
yeah.
Let's do one of those YouTube polls right now,
Yeah,
and
let's do a poll
we can
here.
pick it.
Okay, so Thursday episode, and then we're gonna put first option will be what, fluid responsive,
Mm-hmm.
deep dive.
Yep.
And the next one would be, what was our other option there?
The goal setting.
Goal setting. Okay. Session. Can you spell, Rymar? I can never spell when people are watching, and I feel like right now people are watching. Okay, ask the community. Okay, so leave it in the comments there and let us know what you'd like to see. Do you want us to do a deep dive into the fluid responsive, or do we push that for another week? And do we do a goal setting session, or do you all want to learn about the fluid responsive stuff right now? So we'll explore that at the end of the show. Let's jump into this intro now here, as WordPress being scared of Webflow. And let me explain how this came to be here, because I shared this video with Joe, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to watch a clip here from Matt Mullenweg. They did this State of the Word announcement. It's a conference that they do every year. They address the WordPress community, and there was a moment inside of this where Matt was talking about the growth of WordPress, which you will see that WordPress has grown over the last year, and they make the comment that it grew. Actually, I won't spoil it for you, but it's grown. But he makes some other comments. Let's watch the clip, and then I kind of want to talk about this a little bit, because something he says as part of this clip just got me thinking that maybe, they're not as confident sitting at the top of this pile as they could be. So let's watch and listen to this.
We went from 39.1 to 43.1 in the past year. And this is a list of the other top 5 in there. So the number 2 right now is Shopify, which went from 3.1 to 4.4. Wix is number 3, which went from 1.5 to 1.9%. Squarespace went from 1.4 to 1.8%. And the only other open source project that's still in the top 5 is Joomla, which actually shrunk from 2.2% to 1.8%. In general, the CMSs are not taking market share from each other. So what we're taking market share from is what W3 Techs calls none, which is basically websites that are running a not discernible content management system, which most likely means it's custom or something that was kind of bespoke for that site. So what we've seen is a huge shift. This used to be over 2/3 of sites running some sort of custom CMS of the sites in the top 10 million. A huge shift of them are running to CMSs. But one thing that's concerning to me here is the top 3 used to be WordPress, Drupal, and Joomla, which are all great because we're all GPL. So as those grow, it means that there's more and more open source on the web. But we've seen these 3 proprietary systems pass up all the other open source systems other than WordPress. Now, the good news is WordPress is still growing pretty fast. In this market share analysis, we actually grew 2 entire Wixes this year, which is a new unit of measurement. And to put that in perspective, we're still 10 times larger than number 2 out there. But this doesn't happen for free, and we shouldn't take any of this for granted. In the history of software, and certainly the internet, there are many services that were once dominant that now we need museums to remember what they were. So to maintain and in fact accelerate this growth, which it did in 2021, we really need to, one, stay humble and stay close to users and iterate.
Okay, so that's the gist of the clip there, of clip 1, that I think I want to play here. And Joe, I don't know if you could hear that, but I think maybe you could read the subtitles, I'm hoping.
Yes.
And I know you saw that clip earlier, but so 2 things to kind of talk about there. A lot of this talk revolves around open source, and open source being the future. And because WordPress is open source, that it is imperative to the future of the web. I'd encourage everyone actually who wants to be well-rounded in this industry to go watch that full state of the Word address, because it does show, like, regardless of what we think of WordPress, it does power 43% of the open web, and so it's a significant player in the space. We didn't do our disclaimers, but WordPress is like our Webflow is a very small sliver in the world of web development as of right now. That doesn't mean that can change. And I think that's the second point that I need to bring up about what he was saying there, as he's showing this chart, and I still have the chart up on the screen here. Look how big WordPress is as a part of this ecosystem here. Webflow is not in this mix. It would fall into this other category here. So Blogger, Drupal, Joomla, Squarespace, Shopify, you can see that they're starting to take market share. What he's saying is that they're taking market share from other CMSs, and that those are proprietary platforms rather than open source. And so I want to talk about a couple things here, Joe, and I'm going to get your thoughts here in a second. One is open source the answer? Does a platform have to be open source? As we can see, Apple's not open source, but they're incredibly successful, versus Android or something like that. So I want to talk about that a little bit. And then I want to talk about these proprietary platforms and why they seem to be growing right now, right? So WordPress is still growing, but also BlackBerry continued to grow even after iPhone was launched. And I've made that analogy a number of times. We all know how that story plays out. So, Joe, first thoughts here. What do you think when you see that? What do you think when you hear Matt Mullenweg talking a little bit about, looking at these closed source platforms and really keeping an eye open and saying, hey, there's been a number of times in history where the leading tech company in a space in a couple years is no longer there. So give me your initial thoughts on that.
I see this as two different strategies, the open source versus the closed source. There is no right or wrong. It's just a different strategy to get your product, your solution to the market. So when we have the private, when we have the closed, the benefits you get are services around that solution. Where the open source, you don't have to pay for it, but you don't get those services around the solution. So I like to think that we are getting a bit more lazy as a civilization. We're ordering things on our phones, we're automating things, we want simplicity, right? If we don't have to go drive to the store, fill up gas, go get something, we could just order it on the phone. Let's go and do that. So the idea of these services coming together and helping you move faster, helping you do more things is very attractive. And this is what you get with the closed source. And the open source, it's still good. There's a lot of benefit to it, but it requires more work. And we're now moving into a civilization where we want less work.
Yeah.
So for that big change, I have to think that closed source is going to come the winner here.
Yeah. And I think open source, again, really relies on your technical knowledge. And the no-code world is about separating or abstracting away some of that complexity of the technical requirements, right? So open source is really important if you know how to stand up a server and, set up a manual install of WordPress, and you can go in and update whatever PHP files you need to update or make manual updates or do whatever you want to do. Otherwise, you need a host who does a lot of those things for you. So you'll go to like a WP Engine, or you'll go to some other WordPress host, and that is a proprietary hosting platform that takes open source WordPress and installs it in an environment that now you don't own it, you don't control it, and if you want to have it up, you need to use that system. Same thing with all of the little plugins, right? And so yes, the code itself is open source, but that doesn't get over, I think, the major problem that no code tries to solve, which is removing the complexity, the technical complexity that comes with having to understand the code. And this again is where Webflow is kind of abstracting some of that away with handling the hosting for you, handling the back end, the mapping your URL is super simple. The 301 redirects are right in a little dashboard, and with the extension, you can do those in bulk. So like, yeah. I always have this balance when people hit me with the open source, versus closed source, because they're like, open source is everything, and I'm like, yeah, but so I could download the code and I can own it. But what is that? I can't do anything with it, which makes it essentially useless. And if I have all these plugins plugged in, because we all know WordPress works off these plugins, and I don't pay these plugins for updates or service, well, then I can't use that functionality either. And so yes, it's open source, but it's not really in any meaningful context for people who are going to use the platform. And that's kind of this argument that I make, Joe. And any thought there? And I'd love to hear a good argument against this. Like, I want to talk to like an open source purist about this, who also understands the complexity of trying to abstract this away for the no code world, and to see what the power is there, because I think there's some stuff that Webflow is also doing that could be considered open source as it relates to design, which I think we want to talk about. But Joe, any thoughts on any of that I just kind of get off my soapbox here? And
as we can see, Reimar is very passionate about this topic, because you come from this space, you come from this WordPress environment, so you've felt it. I was only messing around with WordPress for 6 months, so I have a little bit of knowledge there, but I don't have that history that you have. I'm really curious how you find people that have gone from the WordPress to the Webflow. Like what things are happening when you make that change? You're doing less of this, less of this, less of this, and now we get to spend that on design. Now we get to spend that on strategy. We get to charge our clients less money for more work. So yeah, this is a big change. How do you see this when people make that change?
Yeah, and Alex makes such a good point here, because a lot of people don't make this distinction. It says, don't confuse WordPress with Automatic. So this is the difference between WordPress.org, which is the open source platform. This is just the web platform that you can go and install and do whatever you want with. You could even fork it and start your own web builder with this, and you wouldn't even have to call it. You just have to, I guess you'd have to keep it open source. But Automatic has WordPress.com, which is the largest hosted version of WordPress. But they also have all of these other products and services that, again, are built with a GPL license, but that they make a huge business off of, right? And it's closed source stuff. It's proprietary stuff that's built on top of their open source system. And so I guess that's where, like I go back and forth with, how some of these open source purists really say, like, this is the only way because it is open source. And then I'm like, think about all the businesses, like the ecosystem around like something like Linux is massive, right? Linux itself is the core root of it is open source. And I see that there's value in being able to do that, but I don't know that that's the only way, because again, you have other proprietary operating systems, Windows and Apple, that also kind of are very successful, So like when anybody says it has to be open source, that's where I kind of get lost. Any other thoughts on that, Joe?
We have a good comment from Ian Everett. I left WordPress due to the complexity, security risks of plugins or themes getting abandoned by their owners. So I think this sums up the question of what people experience when they make that switch. When you're with the open source, when you don't have that added service of, I guess, security, in the sense that nothing will go wrong, or if something goes wrong, there's a team ready to fix it, right? When it's open source, you're the one that has to fix it, or you have to sign up with some service that you pay, and now it's not really open source anymore.
It's funny because I saw a meme the other day that said everybody wants open source until they need customer support.
Yeah. The wrap services of the closed support is very appealing. So appealing.
Yeah. And WordPress, there's so much that's good, and I don't want to dismiss something that is so big and prolific in the context of understanding that something else is coming behind it, right? And in a couple more years, maybe this will be a lot stronger argument, but I think at this point, you still have a lot of WordPress folks. I watched a guy, actually, it was a WordPress video, was going through Webflow and was looking at all the features and how it works, and was familiar with some of the WordPress like theme builders and page builders and stuff, which actually I want to show a little clip of some of that. and he was really blown away with how it all worked until he got to the pricing, which was a little confusing because Webflow's pricing is a little confusing. And so he got a little confused there. But I think that's the biggest thing, is that most people don't actually see the full value here. And even him, was the first time he had logged into this platform. He didn't really know how to get around. He didn't really understand how it worked. And so he's just seeing at a superficial level. And you can tell that there was a lot of piqued interest. It was like, oh, this is cool, right? Like, and then he wanted to keep coming back to what he knew and why WordPress was still going to win. And it's interesting to just see how that's going to happen. It's like people are starting to see this little spark of this thing. But, you know, and I don't know that WordPress itself, getting back to the thesis of our show here, is WordPress scared of Webflow. I don't think they're specifically scared at this very minute because, again, Webflow is such a small percentage of this market share. If we go back to this graph here, it's not even on the graph. It fits inside of this other category. But how many times have you seen one of those little memes, or not memes, but little like rotating charts on the internet that shows like the top, you know, software company over the years, and it's, you know, MySpace, and then Facebook creeps up, and then Google, and then TikTok comes over, and Instagram, and you know, and it like changes, and you see over the course of like 10 or 15 years, you know, like this little race of these different companies that just slides through, and so I could see, you know, like WordPress is at the top of this chart right now, but over time that's going to start shrinking back as these other proprietary platforms become more simple to use, become easier to use. And that's where I think, let me look at the notes here. Yeah, going back to the open source as being just, if you still can't code, you still have the same complexity here that we're trying to solve with no code. So again, all these platforms are great. The open source thing is great, but it just leaves a lot of people still out, not being able to manipulate these things, which is what we solve with this no code, you know, thing that's happening here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We've got a bunch
Would
of good
love to
comments
bring up a
here.
comment from Alex. Alex says, but you should also not forget that the biggest advances in web have originated through open source.
Yeah.
And then there's another one. He responds again, React, Node.js, Next.js, big list that would never end. All these open source libraries, frameworks, that they're all used in private source products like Webflow. They're built on top of these open source tools. So this is a great argument, and this is absolutely correct. I like to think of this as a different strategy. Business is all about strategies. And Reimar, when you brought up the iOS, the Mac type environment versus the Google Android type environment, this is a really great way to look at it. Apple is super closed off. They don't let anybody interact with their platform unless they want them to. They are very strict about this. It's super closed. And I think they are just the top. They are the top when it comes to this type of managed software. So this is not open source, but this really works. And this has created a very successful company and a cult following. So yeah, there's huge value in this open source, but the closed source also has its benefits if it's done correctly.
Yeah.
If it's not done correctly, of course it doesn't work. But when you turn into something like an Apple, this is proof that it works.
Yeah, and my biggest point against the not like the open source thing was not to say that open source is not important. I think open source is hugely important. And actually, I think this would be a good transition to go into what I think Webflow is open sourcing. I think that open source spirit is important to the evolving web, right? This is not to say that open source is not important. This is only an argument against the folks who say WordPress is better because it's open source, right? There are aspects of WordPress that are better because it's open source. However, that does not mean that as it moves forward, the platform itself for the average person who wants to build on the web is going to be better because it's open source, right? That's the part I disagree with. That's the part I think Joe was just saying, that you can get companies like Apple who take that open source stuff, you know, like Alex is saying here, maybe some of the core elements of it are built on open source libraries, but then they put their secret sauce on top of it, and that's what allows them to build a business. So, you know, this stuff happens. And what I do want to jump into as an open source surrogate here is that I think Webflow is doing something like new in the concept of open sourcing the process of designing software itself. So the tech stack itself may not be open source, but as the software gets better and more people can design and build things, especially with logic, with membership, with authentication, with some of these other tools, and that stuff remains clonable, which is a big part of what Webflow is, that starts to open source the concept of web or software or visual software design. And in my mind, that becomes a new layer of what open source can be. Because now I can create something really cool, let's say a business for a small whatever boutique shop in my neighborhood. I can open source that design by making it clonable in Webflow. And now somebody else who doesn't know how to build with Webflow can clone that and make their own thing with it. And that replicates a lot of what open source is, but in a visual framework in a whole different way. So, that's where I get lost. I think Webflow is redefining a model for open source, and it's not specifically the code base itself. It's the guts of what they're doing with these tools. And again, I'd be interested to debate that with somebody, but yeah, like, I don't know, Joe, thoughts on that?
Totally agree that this new concept of open source design, open source strategy, this is huge. We're also seeing a lot of community resources. There are a lot of companies, of course, including Finsweet, that release things for free, open source, to market the primary business. We release attributes, we release client first, we do all these things for you to then go and market back the business. Just like something like React, right? React was built by Facebook. They needed something internally. They built it and then they released it out. And this encourages people to come and work for their company. It encourages a development community. So this is what a lot of people in Webflow are doing. So Webflow has the benefit of a community spreading the message for them. And yeah, this is obviously a very important sign for any young community. And we see this skyrocketing through the years.
Yeah, let's jump into some of these comments. We're getting some really good comments from a few of the folks in the crowd here. So Penny's saying, I've built a lot of sites using open source software. You have all the control and also all of the headache. So 100%. Yeah, like I said before, right? Everyone wants open source till they need customer support. And especially when you get to some of these technical stuff, you can find with Webflow, a lot of their support, I'm sure evolving, is just people doing things wrong inside the platform. And so with open source and when you're dealing with the code, it's even more complicated. It is getting easier with one-click WordPress installs, with dedicated WordPress hosting, with some of this stuff. It is getting easier, but nothing like, click with Webflow to publish, to have a staging server, to make changes, to design, to have that complete control. So Ezekiel saying, I left WordPress when I found Webflow, immediately switched all my clients to Webflow, easy edits, better client control, less stress, more peace of mind, for sure.
Nice.
Joe, you want to take this one from Colleen here?
Sure. From Colleen, there are some interesting trends underway with open source in general. Some of the corporate sponsorship that has historically been there has been decreasing in recent years. Okay, very interesting. I agree. There's a flourishing development, technical, creative community out there that, yes, they're looking to open source things. They're looking to get their name out there. So I see this too, Colleen.
Yeah. This is a good one here. Ansuit staying, how many open source tools do you use on a daily basis versus how many closed source? Say enough. I think that also goes back to Alex's point, though. We don't really know how much of the open source tools or closed source tools that we use are actually using some of that, open source technology underneath to make that work. So, Annalise is also saying most clients can care less if it's open source or not. They just want a functional asset that adds value to their business or project. So for sure. Anything else you're seeing in here? I think no matter whether you root for Webflow or WordPress, the effort Webflow is making in automation and logic should be acknowledged as the future of web design. WordPress is vintage. Okay, looks like we also Maybe lost Joe in the chat here, so we'll see if he comes back in. Yeah, I agree. Webflow is for sure the future on some of this. Um, th- there's a lot of innovation happening in all the spaces. Webflow is not the only one innovating in this no code space, and um, I agree. I think to follow up on what Alex attributes as private source with a permissive license, the actual source code is private. So yeah, a lot of things is there's a lot of combinations of how this stuff works and how it can be effective inside of building for the web. I think the biggest thing is to look at what it is you're trying to build, what it is you need to accomplish, what the client is going to do with those tools after you build it, and how feasible is it to bring what you're trying to bring to life with whatever tools and resources you have available. Open source, closed source are less important to you than the ability to just get something done, right? And so if you can find a way to get something done and there's a tool that helps you do that, right? If there's an open source tool that helps you do that, use the open source tool. If there's a closed source tool that helps you do that, do that. And I think for a lot of people who want to build websites custom designed, I'll take a closed source tool all the time to build as opposed to an open source WordPress. Because even in WordPress, the best tools themselves, Oxygen Builder, Divi, Elementor, some of those tools, those are closed systems that work inside of it. Now, because WordPress is GPL, I'm sure some of their tools are used with GPL license, but again, unless you're some high-level engineer, you can't do shit with any of those tools without their hosting, without their server infrastructure, and without paying them their monthly fee, which means open source is irrelevant. So, that's all I kind of get back to every single time. That's what I get back to.
And now back to the original question, is WordPress scared of Webflow? Let's touch on that again. I think they will be in 5 years. How about that? I think Webflow in 5 years is going to have a nice little piece of that pie.
Yeah.
We're going to see it on that chart.
Yeah. I think within a couple years, and I think you'll see Shopify will continue to grow. I think Wix will continue to grow on that chart. We saw Matt Mullenweg said something about we grew 2 Wixes. Is a funny line, but I don't know that that those 2 platforms are going to stop growing, and I think you will start seeing a lot more as you go into that. So let's answer a couple of these final questions, Joe, before we go here. Tim saying I love Finsweet, but how do you see Finsweet in 5 years? Will I still be able to use attributes for free? Is it like CMS library? Will I have to switch to a new way, and or will it be a paid service?
Well, I see you being able to use attributes for free in 5 years. CMS library was the V1. Attributes is now the official new way for us moving forward. There's no reason for a significant rebuild on this. And we don't have any plans for paid services on anything that we've released for free. There is a chance that in the future we find ways to have paid services in attributes. But if it's free right now, there is no plan to change that to be monetized.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm gonna share this because Tim was asking off topic, but I know, do you guys have a Finsweet merch store? I just shared it in the links here. You can go to finsweet.merch.webflow.io to get some of that. I think there's a hat in there, different things. Webflow designer, Webflow developer, is there any difference? A lot of times there's overlap, but yeah, Joe, what do you think there?
I think this is how you want to classify yourself. I like to think of myself on the developer side. I like to think more technically than more in a design sense. So I call myself a Webflow developer. If you think of yourself as more of a designer, maybe it feels more comfortable using the Webflow designer term. I think this is just a preference. I don't see a true official difference between the two.
Yeah, I agree. I used to not like to call myself a designer because I wasn't necessarily a designer, but I do design, and and I build in Webflow, and I don't know. I think that's just a personal preference there. So let's see. Okay, we won't get to that. Okay. All right, I think we're good. Joe, I think we're right at that 1 minute line, and I'm getting some laggy. I think I think my CPU again. I think audio and everything is fine. The signal to YouTube is excellent, but I think
Okay.
people might be getting a little bit of glitched out movement. I think we're dropping some frames here, so let's go ahead and
Okay.
call that a day for today. I think that was a good conversation. Let's look at our poll. Let's look at our poll. Okay, so overwhelmingly, people want the fluid, responsive deep dive. So 77 to 23% people have
Whoa.
voted. So it looks like Thursday we will be
Nice.
doing a deep dive.
And if you do not know what that is, we had a Christmas Day release. And that Christmas Day release was a fluid responsive add-on to Client First. It requires no significant build strategy in Client First. So if you're already using it, it fits right on top of that system. We're going to go over how the CSS generator works. We're going to watch it live on a site and talk about how you can really take advantage of this and make your site fluid responsive with Client First. We have a quick little video here, but we're waiting for the full docs. We are preparing a very full overview of what this is, why it works this way, and how all of these draggers work and what we're doing behind the scenes. So wait for that. We don't want to give little tiny pieces of info out. We want this to be like a full case study, a full report on what we've done here.
Yeah, and I think it will
But
be cool.
Thursday, we will be covering part of this. It's not going to be the full review. It's going to be a part review.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm excited to see that. I think the Thursday live builds have been exciting and good. They've been getting good action on the website or on YouTube. So we'll do that for Thursday. We'll plan on that for Thursday. And maybe what we'll do is we'll just do a hangout session for the goal setting thing. One final reminder, next Monday, this coming Monday, we have our Gather hangout. We're going to do our show and tell. So Monday at noon, come share what you've been working on. Come share what you're excited for the year. Those always get fun and interactive. We have a blast. It's less live streamy, more hangouty. We're all inside a Gather. So anyway, we'll see you all there for that. Joe, any final words before we close this out?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad we're at 68 watching now.
Yeah.
I feel every few weeks we get a little bit higher and a little bit higher. So really, thank you for being here, watching this stream, and yeah, we'll see you next week or on Thursday.
Yeah, next week, and we'll have some updates because some of the traveling's coming to an end. We're gonna have a new little studio set up. Things are in the works. So anyway, we'll give you all a proper update on what's happening with all of that in the next session. But until then, see you later.